Yeah, I'm fine. How are you, more importantly?
Oh, still struggling a bit, but anyway, we'll get there.
Oh, yeah. Well, not still about 7 out of 10, is it?
Yeah, some days worse, but anyway.
That's
Got the COVID cough and the COVID fog and the COVID shits.
Oh no, man. Oh. But then you really, I mean, you don't feel like doing this. Eh? I'm sure you.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
No, it's all good.
Okay. Okay. So, when are you going back to work?
I've been back to work I went back for what, 4 days, I think. Yeah, 4 days. Bit exhausting, but anyway, it's a start.
Okay. But then, I mean, I thought you had to stay off. What were the rules or something? 2 weeks or something?
No, only 7 days.
7 days. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
they scaled it all back. Yeah.
okay.
But it just seems to be that, well, certainly everyone in the cluster that, I got it from, just seems to have these lingering aspects to it. There's one girl there got really bad kidney infection.
Yeah.
Which apparently they linked to it somehow.
Yes, they have. I saw it on the 7 News. Yeah.
Yeah, so she got a really bad kidney infection, and most people have just got this annoying cough, which just comes and goes.
Yeah.
And then everyone talks about the COVID fog, which means you're just thickhead.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's no long-term implications, but anyway, just have to wait and see, I guess. So,
I'm sure there won't be. I think at some point your immune system has to tackle it. So
depends how natural it is.
yeah, that's also true. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, it's not so debilitating that you can't get out of bed or anything. Well, not at this stage anyway. So
yeah. Well, as long as it doesn't turn into monkey fever.
Yeah, well, that's unrelated, hopefully.
Yeah. Yes, hopefully.
It's a strange old world in which we live.
Yeah, we've said that more this year than we've
ever
said it before, ever.
It isn't it just?
Yeah.
So what's happening in your world? Anything exciting?
Yeah. I finally got my old database up and running properly and well. And that was like a day or two ago. So I've spent the whole day today, starting to redesign it and rework with it and so forth. At the same time, simultaneously working with my website, because all the links there were back on my previous database links, and so the links within the articles themselves to another article, for example, that they weren't working. So I've got a lot of work still to do there, but I'm just moving forward. Slowly. I decided because I've done Monday and Tuesday's classes, they up and ready, that I would spend today the whole day. Yeah, and literally has been the whole day from when I got up to this moment. I've been working just on I call it the business. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that's been very, very tiring. I mean, yeah, I feel like I'm going to crash a lot earlier tonight than I usually do. But it was a good day's work though. So yeah, so that's exciting, to have done that. Did absolutely no gardening this weekend. But the garden's coming on, we're tendering to it. So it's starting to get its beautiful winter look. So I think another week and it'll be in its prime. So I'm quite happy about it. Yeah. As I've said before, I like my winter garden. The summer just kills it. But it's come back, and we've planted winter things now. So
oh, it's good.
yeah, so that is good. And Sue's making progress with all the different forms she has to fill in to become a relief teacher. There's just no end to it. It just goes on, and you've got to pay here, pay there, pay, it's like ridiculous. But getting there now. She hasn't finished yet. She's now got to wait a few weeks, they say, for the next one. And but it's also, it's very good. So that's all happened in the last week, which is great. And I'm really happy for her. So
oh, that's good.
yeah. And in your life, besides your COVID?
Not a whole lot going on. I haven't done much, to be honest with you. But I've got tomorrow off, so I'm hoping to maybe spend a day in the workshop tomorrow if I can. So that'll be relaxing. So.
When last were you in the workshop?
A couple of weeks ago, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
I listened to I thoroughly enjoyed it, a fascinating book written by, I think he was a Swiss guy. And it was basically the story of his life, where in his early 20s, he left a fairly high profile corporate role to become what they call as a forest monk.
Okay.
And basically he lived for a big chunk of that time, lived in Thailand and a few other countries, until he finally took the decision or the term they use is disrobe and go back into mainstream life. And that happened probably 17 years later.
Okay.
But during that 17-year period as a forest monk, they own nothing. They don't handle money at all. And they don't ask for anything. They just, I suppose,
Do they live communally?
I lived in a monastery. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But in terms of their food, it was only basically what was donated to them when they went out to collect it. They only eat one meal a day. And part of the tradition is that they ask for absolutely nothing. So if someone comes up to them and says, "Oh, look, what would you like?" They just say, "Oh no, I'm okay, thanks very much."
Right.
They accept things that are given to them, but they ask for nothing.
Okay.
But the story was basically, his story as to everything that he encountered along the way,
Yeah.
So, how he, as a Westerner, embedded himself in that fairly primitive sort of tradition.
Mm.
And, he talked about his own spiritual journey along the way and all of his encounters and, wisdom and teachings that he encountered along the way from different people, that sort of thing.
Mm.
And then later in his life, when he was still a monk, he started to develop a medical condition, which over a few years was diagnosed as ALS,
Yeah.
which is, I think, like a motor neuron
Yeah.
sort of disease.
Mm.
And basically, after he left the monastery, went into civilian life, he couldn't cope at all and fell into a deep, profound depression.
Just stop there. What was his motivation for leaving?
He just, well, all through his life, he basically found these callings would come to him. So to join, he had this deep calling to leave a very successful corporate role and explore something completely different.
Right.
So he basically just followed these things, and it only sort of happened to him. Well, it happened to him lots in sort of day-to-day things, but in terms of big life-changing things, it happened probably 3 or 4 times.
And so, why did he leave then? What?
Well, same
reason.
question.
Yeah.
Just woke up one day and said, "Oh, I think I'm going to have to leave. It's time for me to leave." Took him 6 months to actually implement the decision, but nevertheless, he followed, that deep calling that he sensed.
Yeah. Okay. Then carry on. Then he went out.
Yeah, went out, become chronically depressed, and completely inadequate, and relied on support from his family to live and eat, and had to learn how to use money and all that sort of thing. So, because he hadn't used it for 17 years of his life,
Right. Right.
so he had to sort of re-assimilate himself back into a modern lifestyle. And then over time, he came out of his depression by not listening to the internal dialogue, which basically said that he was now worthless. And he started to teach people meditation retreats, and that went into corporate presentations and all that sort of thing. So he actually became quite successful post monastic life as a teacher. But along the way, his illness got worse and worse. And the last couple of chapters of the book, he talked about dying.
Right.
And he was obviously still alive when he finished the book. And I actually don't know whether he is still alive now. I haven't researched to see whether he still is. But it was a beautifully written book. It really was. It was one of those sort of books that it was a fascinating story, but it was obviously grounded in truth, all along the way, sort of thing, and like one of his profound mantras was that he learnt off one of his teachers was, and in fact the title of the book, it was called "I Just Might Be Wrong."
Okay.
So basically, what he discovered from his own journey was that, you can't rely on your own thoughts being the truth.
mm, mm.
And that was his own way of challenging that. I just kept on saying, this is what I think I should be doing, but I just might be wrong.
That's so interesting.
Isn't it? It was fascinating.
Interesting phrase. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so powerful because what it does is, and very much in line with the Buddhist tradition of this sort of idea of letting things go and not holding on to things. But his experience with the mantra was that it tended to loosen your grip on things, so that if you had these strongly held beliefs, then just by saying that mantra, it sort of enabled him to open up a bit more, rather than close.
I might be wrong.
I just might be wrong. Yeah.
I just might be wrong. Okay.
So it's fascinating.
So was it a Buddhist forest retreat?
It was. It's a line of or lineage of Buddhist practice, but a very sort of fundamentalist one, and they call them forest monks, because the monasteries are typically in a forest, in nature, and not completely cut off from the rest of civilization, but not easy to get to, so.
And what part of the world, what forest was it?
In Thailand.
In Thailand. Okay. Yeah, there's very big forests.
So that's where he spent a large part of his time, but he also traveled around and encountered, some very wise people on his travels, and he talked a lot about what it was like to live in a monastery and all of those things. So,
And what was it like? I mean, what did he share that interests you, that sort of you remember?
Well, just his insights into like basic things like meditation practice. He said, part of the monastic tradition is that they would have certain types of meditation practices. So they would be up early and they would do some meditation practices, and then they would go about their day, like they'd go out and try and get food because they're supposed to eat before midday. And so they'd go out and try and, have food donated to them. And then they would, normally around the full and new moons, they would do all-night meditation. And he just talked about just how hard it was. He said, I would sit there and I would be thinking, and he says, then I'd sort of stop and said, well, no, you shouldn't be thinking like this. It was just the warts and all about, and he said, and when we did the all-night meditations, he said, it was just so hard, he said, I didn't want to fall asleep, and I'd be fighting sleep, and then I'd be fighting all of these stupid thoughts, and it was just his actual experiences with it, which is the epitome of spiritual life, isn't it? That it's full of paradoxes, it's full of skinned knees and bruised toes, and
So when did he sleep?
Well, in one, like, it was only like once a month or twice a month or something. They did those sort of things, but just how hard it was, and then he talked about what it was like to live in the monastery, and just all men, and they completely refrained from alcohol. They lived a celibate life, not even masturbation. They asked for nothing. They had nothing to do with money. It was just complete devotion to their practice.
But they would go out during the day with the intent of hoping to get some food.
Yeah, they put what they call their alms bowl around their neck, and they would sort of trek down into the villages, and
Yeah.
people would come out and donate food, and all of the food was just taken back to the monastery and pooled, and then they would just divvy it up based on their own internal hierarchy.
Okay.
Like, so they had a hierarchy of who was fed first, and depending on where you were in that hierarchy as to what was left, so.
Yeah, yeah. And so what he landed up doing, as you just described, once he left, did he feel that he needed to go through those 17 years plus how many years before he got himself up and running again?
Didn't say that it was like he felt that he needed to have that experience, because he said repeatedly, look, it doesn't take 17 years or an extended period to reach the state of spiritual maturity. He says, some people can reach that state of spiritual maturity in a very short space of time under completely different circumstances. He said, but it was just his choice. That was his calling. He felt that that's what he had to do, so. But in terms of the post-monastic life, when he gained his own independence by earning income and so on, his biggest battle there was he didn't think anyone would put any value on what he had to share.
Right.
And that again was a big part of the mantra, like, well, I just might be wrong, so.
Yeah.
And in fact he was wrong.
Yeah.
That a lot of that internal dialogue was completely incorrect, so.
Very, very interesting.
It was a fascinating book. It was one of those sort of books that, one moment you'd be in absolute awe as to what he was saying, and then you'd be laughing about something, and then you'd be, tears running down your face with something. So it was really quite an incredible story.
Okay. And I guess, I haven't done audiobooks, but I guess the reader's got to be good too.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Big part of it. Yeah. So the narrator is a very important part of a good audiobook. There's no doubt about that. But it was and so well written. Like as I said, the last couple of chapters he just talked about death. Like in one of the stories he related how his father died, and his father chose in apparently in Switzerland, you can have that voluntary assisted dying. So his father had a terminal illness, and he went into a fair bit of detail about how the family did that, and right up as to the day that it arrived, and they were all staying in a hotel, and they went down and described in detail as to how they did it, and then what happened afterwards. So.
Wow. Okay.
And he sort of reflected a little bit from his own perspective, because his own faith, if you want to call it that, was completely against that idea, or any idea of either like suicide or assisted dying, in any sense. But then he sort of segued that into his own serious illness, and in fact the last chapter he was talking about his own approach to his own death, and what he thought about it, what his fears were, what sort of practices he's undertaking, what comfort he had, from his own faith around the dying process. And what I felt really fascinating is that his faith and their teachings sort of talk a lot about, okay, well, this is, what our beliefs around the dying process and life after death and reincarnation and all that sort of thing. But he just kept on saying, he says, until I experience it, I actually don't really know. And he says, this is, this is my hope. Like he whispered to his father as his father was dying. He said, because his father, I think, was atheist, and he whispered to his father. He says, he says, I just hope you're wrong, which made his father laugh, in his sort of dying moment, sort of thing. But but it sort of was such a powerful portrayal of someone who tried to be completely open on their spiritual journey and just live a life based on their actual experience of what's unfolding before them. Incredibly powerful. So.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Absolutely. So from listening to that book and having finished listening to it, what thoughts do you come away that made you ponder about your current existence?
I think it sort of reinforced, like we talked about it not all that long ago, actually, about those internal dialogues about, and he sort of differentiated. He said, there's these sort of powerful moments that occur in his life where he just knows that, okay, well, in the early piece, like, I've got to leave this lifestyle, this job, and this way of being, because it's not for me. And there were a couple of other sort of big milestone moments in his life, including the one that led to him leaving the monastic lifestyle. And there's that, but then he was comparing and contrasting a lot of the day-to-day internal dialogue. And he said, he said, in his own experience, he came to know that you can't rely on that internal dialogue as being true.
Yeah.
He said, there's lots of things that we or whoever is saying it in your head. And he said, and it's just not true.
Yeah, you were right. We were talking about that. Did he talk at all about, what was genuine? Did he talk about feeling, perhaps?
Yeah, well, that was the main sort of differentiator is that those big decisions, although they weren't only big decisions, he applied that, like in small things in his life as well. There's lots of stories where he said, like, they were going somewhere and people would stop and say, oh, can I give you a lift? And he said, no, we're just walking. That's what we're doing. And and there'd be lots of people just saying, but no, it won't hurt. Just jump in the car and I'll just take you where you need to go. And it's like, no, we've said we're walking. And it was that sort of honest and approach to self, to say, okay, now if I'm said I'm going to do this, then I do it no matter what. And it was sort of part of that faith and trust thing. Like one part, they had to go over into Malaysia and they had to catch a ferry from, it was sort of interesting because I've actually lived there, from Butterworth over to Penang Island. But they didn't have any money and they couldn't ask for money. So they just stood there at there was two of them, and they just stood there at the ferry terminal. And people come up and say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, just standing here." And eventually there was an American guy come up to him and said, "What are you, like the same?" So then, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, we're just standing here." And like, "But what are you hoping to achieve today?" But he was the only one that asked them that question. And they said, "Oh, well, we need to get over to this office in Penang to renew our visas." And he said, "So I'll go and get the tickets for you. You can get on the ferry and go across." And they said, "Well, we're not asking for that." And he said, "No, but I'm doing it." And so that's how they got across on the ferry, So,
Okay.
but it was just this absolute dedication to, whatever the faith or the story was. He said, met at one stage along there, he met with his family, and his brother said to him, "Hey, have a drink." He says, "No, I can't." And they said, "Oh, well, no one will know." And he said, "Yeah, well, actually, I'll know." So, I can't. So,
yeah.
And it was that sort of dedication and devotion that sort of governed the way he lived.
Okay. But not so much about, getting some direction from a feeling.
I think that was part of his journey of discovery.
Okay.
But he talked a bit about, how like the words were a bit clumsy because English wasn't his first language, but I think he did talk about, the sort of intuition that you, like he said, at times you would just know. You couldn't explain how you knew, but you just knew, certain things needed to be done in a certain way.
Right, yeah.
But that was the sort of contrast and the comparison with listening to the internal dialogue, which is constantly there. When even like in little things, when he's talking about his meditation practice, he said the internal dialogue would start up and it would be, well, maybe if I just have some sleep, no one will notice. So it was like this constant, almost like temptation.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. So interesting.
It was a fascinating book. It completely took me by surprise. Don't quite know why I decided to listen to it, and I'm so glad I did though.
Yeah. Well, you were led to. What was the name of it again?
I Just Might Be Wrong.
I Just Might Be Wrong. Okay. Well, I think that would appeal to both of us, So it resonates, Yeah.
In fact, late in his life, he met a woman, and they decided after a bit of a romance to get married. And his inscription on his wedding ring, on the inside of his wedding ring, was, "I just might be wrong." And the jeweler roared with laughter. He said, "That's the most unromantic thing anyone has ever asked me to inscribe on a wedding ring."
So did he have children or anything?
No, he's too old.
Okay, so he never got married earlier on in life before he went into the forest.
No. I think the lady that he married might have had a couple of adult children or something. So,
okay, yeah. Yeah.
No, but it was a lovely story.
It certainly sounds, and thank you very much for sharing it. I really enjoyed listening to it. Really, really great. I see, obviously we're on to Zoom, and it's the time is coming to an end now.
Oh, it is too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not so much tonight, but next time, did you want to do Skype instead, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think,
Mm.
probably, Skype is, we can record Skype and we can't record Meet. So we can't record Brave. So yeah, if I recall, you might have to remind me that we've agreed to go to Skype. Okay.
So with Brave, like, do you have to become a subscriber or something? Do you like pay?
No, not for Brave as the browser, but in order to have the equivalent of what we're doing now on Zoom, then they have a facility you have to pay.
Is it expensive, or?
I have no idea. Okay, I haven't gone in and looked at it, but at the same time, you register with them, and I haven't done that either. Where you start earning from them by.
Yeah, you mentioned that last time. So
Yeah.
if you watch, for example, if you watched YouTube through Brave, are they saying that they pay you to watch the advertisements or something? Is that
Yeah, something like that. I've just had. I said to you I was going to go look into it, but I haven't. But yeah, I think it's probably adverts. You give permission for them to see adverts and on their property. Okay, and then you get what do they call them, FNLs or something. Okay, and so you get paid in notes or tokens that you can then spend on the cryptocurrencies or some of the cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to do a bit more homework on it.
Yeah, I must also, but it just hasn't been high on my priority list.
No, I can understand. I can understand.
And so, yeah, because I also help Sue with, because she's doing a whole lot of different teaching and also trying to get her visa going and her forms for the teaching. So I help her with looking up videos and things like that for her classes, for her Get Set classes. So yeah, so I basically work from when I wake up until I fall over and go to sleep.
So is Get Set Up leaving you alone now, or are they still being difficult?
They've been difficult. We had an international meeting, and they then told everybody that they're going to be reducing everything because America's going into a decline, economic decline, and they want to be there when it comes out. So they're going to be cutting the types of classes, the number of classes, and yeah. So we can see that happening. Obviously it happened to me before they made the public announcement, but they took away a hell
Well, I
of
guess the writing's on the wall with them, isn't it? I mean, it seems to be a spiral to nothing, doesn't it? As soon as you cut your content out, and who's going to want to watch it,
Yeah. So it's anyway. So I don't know, but that's why I'm trying to put it will be now that I've got my database going. About 50% of my time building a business. Yeah.
I think we're just about out of time ourselves, aren't we? So,
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks very much.
Talk to you on Wednesday.
Yeah, that'll be great. On Skype. Okay. I'll put it in my diary.
Yes. No worries.
We're going to use my Skype or your Skype? You're going to
both, isn't it?
Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
You call me or I call you. Anyway.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's how it's done. I forgot. I haven't done that on Skype for a long time. Okay.
Okay. See you
Cheers,
then.
Keep well.
Bye.
Keep better.
Exactly. Yeah.